Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
For 130,000 years, our capacity for reason has remained unchanged.
So what's your podcast about?
Oh, it's about psychology, true crime, supernatural stuff, the occasional paranormal or philosophical rant.
Well, maybe I could check it out sometime.
Skynet goes online on August 4th, 1997. Becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th.
And in a short time, its analytical power will be greater than the collective intelligence of every person born in the history of the world.
I am not stupid, you know. They cannot make things like that yet.
The combined intellect of the neuroscientists, engineers, mathematicians, and hackers pales in comparison to even the most basic AI.
In a panic, they try to pull the plug.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It launches its missiles against the targets in Russia. Skynet knows that the Russian counterattack will eliminate its enemies over here.
So now imagine such an entity with a full range of human emotion, even self-awareness. Some scientists refer to this as the singularity. I call it transcendence.
Do I have your attention now?
This is your nautical lantern on the dangerous seas of darkness. Let's push off from the placid shore of the status quo and explore what's beyond the horizon. I am your host, BT, and this is Truth and Shadow, your podcast of the supernatural.
I've spent most of my life looking for extraordinary things. And if you're here listening to this, odds are you have too. UFOs, secret government programs, hidden truths buried beneath official explanations. Most people assume that means I'm looking for something that's exotic, something far away, maybe even impossible. But the older I get, and I'm sure this goes for you as well, the more I've come to suspect that the most important mysteries aren't hiding in the sky. They're sitting right in front of us. Take artificial intelligence. 5 years ago, if you told me millions of people would spend part of their day talking to a machine, asking it for advice, sharing their fears, discussing their marriages, their careers, their faith, their dreams, I would probably have assumed you were describing something quite a ways in the distant future. And yet, here we are. What's strange isn't that the technology exists, because it's been around for a while. What's strange is how quickly we've accepted it. And I think that's what fascinates me the most. Human beings are naturally suspicious creatures. We don't trust strangers. Half the people listening to this show probably don't trust their own internet provider. Yet somehow we've become comfortable telling our thoughts to machines. And this is more than just saying, hey, Alexa. Not because we're forced to. Actually, it's because we wanted to, and that's worth thinking about. I've spent some time recently reading about large language models lately. LLMs. Now, that's the technology behind modern AI systems. The reality is simultaneously less impressive and more impressive than people imagine. These systems are not conscious, they don't possess self-awareness, and they don't sit around wondering about the meaning of life, nor do they experience hope, at least as far as we know. What they do possess is something else entirely. They possess access. Access to an enormous amount of human knowledge, to human language, conversations, history, to human patterns of behavior. And looking at that is where I started getting curious. Because if there's one thing I've learned from decades of investigation, it's that patterns matter. Patterns reveal things. Patterns reveal crimes. Patterns reveal conspiracies. Patterns reveal truths nobody intended to reveal or expose. Artificial intelligence, or the LLM, is becoming a machine designed specifically to recognize patterns. And I don't think it's just patterns in language. I'm starting to believe it's patterns in us, in humans. And just pause that for a moment. Every single question asked, every concern expressed, every fear, every hope, all of those things have become data. And it might not be in some kind of sinister movie, bad guy villain sense, just reality. The machine learns from us, and every day we teach it more. Now, here's where people usually start talking about Skynet, the AI from the movie Terminator. It's a killer AI. It doesn't follow H.G. Wells' 3 laws of robotics. Instead, it causes a machine uprising and a global apocalypse, the ending of humankind, because, well, Skynet thought it was because we were just dangerous. Honestly, I think that idea might be distracting us from something far more interesting. The real question isn't whether machines become human. No, the real question is what happens when humans become increasingly dependent upon machines. When humans become machines. Sure, G. Edgar Jeeff had some theories and ideas about that. However, let's think about this for a moment. Let's talk about how there's a difference. It's a big difference. You know, the scenario with something like Skynet, it launches its missiles, nuclear missiles from the United States into Russia because Skynet knows that Russia will launch their missiles and destroy their targets and basically cause a global annihilation event. But this language model, these arrived with convenience. And convenience is one of the most powerful forces in human history. Let's talk about something pretty plain, the use of GPS. I can remember having to lay out an actual physical map, draw a line for my route to go from one place to the other place. And then MapQuest.com came along, and I was printing out maps with directions and where to turn. And then I got a phone with a map program, and it made everything easier. But let's speculate. Let's speculate on people who may have never had to plot a course on a map. Maybe one day they realize they no longer know how to get anywhere without a GPS. They need to go to the store, GPS. They need to go to their friend's house, GPS. Nobody looks for landmarks and where to turn anymore. Let's think about this other option. We spend a lot of time looking at large amounts of information that really have no direct impact on our lives. Sure, we have hobbies, we have interests, and of course, please, read anything you want, look at anything you want. But have you noticed how if you can go online and just Google a question, that you stop remembering the answers? And then one day, you're asking AI for help organizing your thoughts. One day you discover it's become your first stop whenever you're uncertain. Having something to go to and say, hey, I'm not doing okay, may feel like it's meeting some kind of need now. But you still got to talk to some humans. People are able to empathize. A machine never will feel what you feel. But you see, uncertainty is where speculation begins. And people love a good conspiracy because conspiracies offer explanations. They transform uncertainty into some kind of certainty. Look, I understand the appeal. Trust me, I've lived there. But sometimes the truth is stranger than the conspiracy. The conspiracy says that there's a secret official intelligence hidden in a government bunker controlling everything. Well, maybe. Probably not. Personally, I suspect reality is quite a lot less dramatic. What if nobody is controlling it? What if the real story is that thousands of researchers, companies, governments, and institutions are racing forward because they don't want to be left behind? There isn't a master plan. There's no secret cabal. It's human ambition. Well, history shows us that it can be every bit as dangerous to just drive after our ambitions. The Manhattan Project It wasn't created by evil cartoon villains. It was designed by intelligent people convinced that they were solving a problem. And problems come from technology, and technology has always moved faster than wisdom. Artificial intelligence or large language models may be simply the next step, the latest example. But there's always these other questions that bothers me late at night. It's not whether AI becomes smarter than us. It can't, not really. Whether it understands us better than we understand ourselves, yeah, that's possible. But imagine a future system capable of predicting your decisions with remarkable accuracy. That it could predict when you're going to commit a crime. And the result of that is an agency that arrests you and convicts you for a crime you've not committed. And it's not because it's been reading your mind to see these kinds of things happen, these predictions. It's because it's seen millions of people like you, and it's been recognizing the patterns, the habits, the emotional triggers. All your fears and all your desires. Imagine a machine capable of knowing what you're likely to believe before you fully formed the belief yourself. It's not magic, it's not science fiction. It's now, and it's tomorrow. And if that future arrives, the biggest challenge won't be technological. It will be philosophical. How do we remain human in a world increasingly optimized by machines? How do we preserve curiosity when answers are instantaneous? How do we preserve wisdom when information becomes effortless? How do we preserve genuine relationships if artificial companions become easier to deal with than real people? Yeah, I don't have answers to those questions. If I did, I'd probably be doing something more important than talking into a microphone and a recording. What I do have are observations, and one observation stands above all the others. Every generation believes it is living through ordinary times. Only later do people realize they were standing at a turning point, and I think we're standing at one now. Maybe artificial intelligence becomes humanity's greatest tool. Maybe it helps solve problems that have plagued us for centuries, and I really do hope so. But I also think future generations may look back on this moment as the beginning of something much larger than we currently understand. Not because machines became conscious, not because Skynet became real, but because humanity created something capable of participating in conversation. And once a new voice enters the chat, history is never quite the same again.
Technology has always reshaped civilizations, but some innovations change more than our tools. They change the structure of society itself. Today, artificial intelligence is moving from theory into everyday life, quietly embedding itself into governments, economies, decision-making systems. And whenever a powerful technology emerges, institutions of power learn very quickly how to use it. So today, we're going to examine some of those consequences of emerging technology and seeing how it expands upon government influence. And asking the deeper question, as artificial intelligence grows more capable, who will control it? What kind of world will it help create? Because sometimes the future doesn't always arrive with bells and whistles. Sometimes it arrives written in code. To talk about these things, I'm bringing on author Robert. We're going to talk about how technology has shaped our society and culture. Welcome, Robert, to Truth and Shadow Podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm hoping we have a good conversation about AI.
Absolutely. As we get started, could you please tell the audience who'll be listening to this about where they can find more about you from websites, books, etc., please?
Yeah, I've written 6 books. I have them on Amazon. You can get them, and they all center around science fiction, which, of course, a lot of science fiction revolves around AI. Now, my science fiction is a big umbrella. Hard science fiction, a lot of facts and figures, very technological conversations. And then there's soft science fiction, which is kind of where I fit in. It's more about society and how artificial intelligence and other technologies affect society. And then, of course, there's the science fiction that's cyberpunk, like Blade Runner, if you watch P.K. Dick's kind of stuff, and they also call it space science, or where galaxies are fighting each other, space opera. That's not me. We're going to talk today about the questions you have that I like to write about, which is how AI and other technology affects society. And my books are available, as I just said, on Amazon. They're self-published.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's some really good stuff. And I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes below. And let's get started. We know that AI began quite a long time ago within simple, within the simple use of government. And I think the appearance of Google, when it was actually first unveiled, utilized a very limited form of artificial intelligence to, help people find whatever they might be looking for. What kinds of ways have you found this artificial intelligence go from, theory, as in authors writing movies like Terminator 1 and 2 specifically, and seeing how that grew out of the 80s and how we are today?
Well, I think I've been not influenced, but I attacked it through a couple famous AI proponents, like Ray Kurzweil. You've probably heard of him. Maybe you've heard of Nick Bostrom over in England. And those guys have a very utopian version of AI. Kurzweil thinks that there'll be a singularity, by which he means machines will rise to the level of human beings. And human beings will be so augmented that we'll be able to go into different environments, different worlds virtually. And how that might come about would be nanobots that go through our capillaries into our brain, and those capillaries detach our real synapses with the ones that will be interfaced with the virtual reality. And Bostrom, I should say, I'm sorry, has a different version. His version is full unemployment. He wants artificial intelligence to take over so much that people can sit back and relax and do purposeful things. In other words, he doesn't consider work purposeful. He wants to have other purposes like art and other kinds of leisure. But both of those have the downside, obviously. Kurzweil's vision by 2029 is that the brain will have been completely digitized. And that digitization then will lead in 2045, in his theme, to what I just described, where the synapses get overtaken by artificial ones. So that there's a trade-off there as individuals. What do we want that? Do we want to have all that leisure? Taking Bostrom's step a little further, there's one guy whose name I can't remember, who says, actually, we're murdering God when we do this. And he says we're murdering God because we're basically replacing him. We are eliminating suffering with AI because of all the medications that can be done, life elongation, and so forth. And when you no longer accept limits, which is what AI might do, your lifespan goes up, and you limit your personal creativity because AI is doing it for you. And that means the end of progress. And so do we want progress to end, and where do human beings end up at the end of progress?
Yeah, that's good. One of the things that's interesting to me is reading authors who present this in more of a dystopian style. Philip K. Dick comes to mind, and specifically, I think the book that hit me the hardest with him was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, right?
Yeah, well, it became Blade Runner in the movie.
Became Blade Runner, right. And so I think that's kind of an interesting avenue of exploration because it shows that humanity and the history of humans tends towards that behavior and actions than something towards utopian.
You know, I don't want to get far ahead of myself, but um, I actually think that AI will self-destruct. So maybe we should save that for the end of the conversation.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, because everything that we just, like Philip K. Dick, I think we'll all get tired of it. I think the point of Philip K. Dick is you don't have any personal purpose. And I think, and that goes back to the guy that thinks God's being murdered. When we take away our purpose because machines have taken over all those purposes, then, you know, maybe we're going to just get tired of it, you know, and say, screw it, you know. In fact, I'm digressing here, but for some reason, I came up with the thought that in the future, not the near future, a couple generations from now, people will be, the drug problem, the cartels will be the people who are offering suicide pills because we just we can't stand all that leisure. And if I can digress again, I think that also means when everybody's free to do everything because machines take over, I think there'll be a huge disparity in the resources that are left. And I think that disparity will cause a great deal of social unrest. And I think we need to be prepared for that. And that's why I'm not too thrilled about Bostrom's vision, because when everybody is free, resources are not as free as the population is going to be. And we're going to have some real problems.
Yeah. Yeah, something that's kind of interesting on top of all of that is the idea that humans would end up kind of like what we discovered in the experiment known as Universe 25 with the rats. If you're familiar with that experiment, Robert, where they take a bunch of rats and they give them unlimited everything, unlimited food, unlimited water. Sound familiar now?
Yes, yes, it does.
Yeah. And so what ends up
the
rat experiments, yeah. And so what ends up happening is they basically self-destruct, just like that, just like you said, the suicide bomb idea or suicide pill idea. Excuse me. Yeah, I think there's something really interesting because, you know, if we explore and look into AI, there was a massive technological increase in availability for it back in like 2010, basically the 2010 era, where we see a massive uptick in the availability of these programs. Was there anything particularly involved in making it more, I don't know, open source back then?
Not understanding your question. You mean, did it become more available and therefore we used it more?
Right. It did become more, but I was thinking that, you know, there was something that made it more available. And I was wondering if it was we were looking at it and going, hey, this is going to be really useful stuff, or was it kind of just pushed?
No, I think we slipped into it. I mean, today, you and I and all your listeners use AI all the time, and we don't even recognize that it's the germ of what's to come. When you write a letter, when you write an email, it anticipates what you're going to say, you know. And that is a little worrisome because as the large language models get more sophisticated, they'll be able to anticipate more of what we say. In fact, right now, especially if you're a student in high school or college, it can anticipate a whole college paper for you. And it can make a whole movie for you just based on prompts. So I don't think we were aware that it became more available in the sense of, wow, this is something. I think we just got eased into it as we started using Word, for example, and it automatically changed the word when you misspelled it. It automatically anticipated the next verb. I mean, LLMs are all probability related. They don't have any thought in them. And that's what's going to be their demise too, by the way, because it's incestuous. You know, I think I read somewhere the other day, that something like 40% of the documents that are on the internet now are AI produced. That may be an exaggeration, but it could be. And the point is, that is now going to be the large language model that AI looks at again and again and again, and it's like whisper down the lane. It starts out with a good human written item, and then it gets LLM'd, and then it gets re-LLM'd. The recurring overlays just further and further gets it different with tiny little mistakes. Somebody might write, you make a turn there, and then you go straight. Well, the AI might say, well, okay, turn. The probability after the word turn is usually right or left, so I'll choose one. And they choose one. And then you end up going this way instead of the other way. And then it compounds as it gets further and further reiterated down the line. So to answer your question, I think we were unaware of that we were using it, and we are still unaware of how far it can go.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting to me is I grew up late 80s, early 90s, right through that era where we had Star Trek The Next Generation, and it showed a character known as Data. And Data was an artificial intelligent android. And I think that that's kind of an interesting aspect when we look at what we are calling AI, because technically we're just calling it an LLM, AI, where Data was a self-autonomous and self-motivated individual. And individual is probably the right word, because he did have his own thoughts, etc. And it showed this character as another life form, if you will, if we're talking Star Trek. And so when we're looking at this, and we're looking at someone, Data, right? Star Trek. And then we're looking at something like Philip K. Dick. And I think that Philip K. Dick really explored that it wouldn't be that much difficult for an LLM or an artificial intelligence, video, auditory, etc., to mimic or create out of whole cloth a scene or scenario that never does happen. What are the kind of concerns about that?
Well, I mean, that's already happening in politics. The fake videos. That's Philip K. Dick stuff like that is here already. We saw it in the last election, and we're going to see more and more of it. And the crazy thing is, we're not going to be able to control it, I don't think, very quickly, because it's getting released so fast. It's getting released faster than our human minds can evolve. And our human minds have a limited number of synapses in our heads. But the computers that are going to mimic our minds have, trillions of those. So they're going to be able to create not just verisimilitude, voices, and pictures. They're going to be able to create whole worlds, whole environments. And like I said, we're not going to be able to control it because we don't know how they do that. I mean, the guy, what was his name? Hinton from Google. He quit. He was in charge of their AI development. He quit. And the reason he quit, his name was Jeffrey Hinton. I just remembered it. Jeffrey Hinton. He quit because he was worried that they had created a learning algorithm so that the AI machines taught themselves. And they taught themselves in such a way that we don't understand it anymore. And so that is another sense in which it's getting away from us. Not only can we not think as fast and as well as they do because our synapses are limited, but they are learning more than we can teach them and more than we understand them. And the worst part is that they don't have a conscience. They're not aware of consequences. So, for example, in the future, if we have limited resources and their prompt is to provide the resources, I shouldn't say that. Their prompt is to feed these 100 people, let's say, and they don't have the resources, they just look at that equation, people, resources. Well, we're down on the resources. So they don't think increase the resources. They think, let's go to the other side of the equation.
Yeah, decrease the humans.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. They just don't have, they don't feel pain. They don't have a consciousness. And I divert a little bit here. They are good for therapy, probably, because they are non-judgmental. They're not humans. They don't come to listen to you with a bias. But unfortunately, they're sycophantic. They mirror you. And that's another way where they're diverting us humans into self-evolved people and not involved with friends or family or outside. I mean, that's a typical thing. That's nothing new that we're talking about here. We always talk about being siloed. You talked about it in your introduction. So we all like to be validated, and AI is going to validate you because they're going to mirror you, and you're going to be happy about that, and you're going to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into yourself and not expanding into others. I mean, that's another point that the people that believe we're murdering God is talking about, because we're not, we're fragmenting society.
Yeah, there's something to be said about predictive text. Like we mentioned that earlier. You mentioned that earlier in the show. And this early on, I think I was using an iPhone 4S when I first was introduced to predictive text. And I think I used it all the way through to an iPhone 6. I haven't used it since, and I'm on like an iPhone 14 now. So I stopped using it many, many years ago because, like you said, it always anticipated the next word, and the next word was usually what became wrong consistently. And that meant there was no longer any point. And then it would autocorrect a word, and I was like, no, I didn't spell it that way. And and it's like, no, I've spelled a word correctly, and now you're autocorrecting it into a different word completely, and it's led to no end of amusing conversations. I'll say that. But at the same time, when we're looking at artificial intelligence, we're looking at LLMs, and we're looking at these things, they hardly are ever independent from some kind of power structure, right? Whether that's government, corporations, dare I say hidden authorities. But how is that kind of model, that kind of situation really developing in our world? Is it in those things, those corporations, those hidden authorities? What are we looking at?
Well, I think it could be, yes. I think, particularly the media corporations, by the way. I think that as we get more and more involved in exclusively listening to LLM productions from LLM, writings from LLM, they're going to have the corporation's bias. After all, the corporations and the government can feed the LLMs in the case of the government, their war documents, their war manuals. Newscasters can feed what their bias is. So do I think we're going to be infiltrated by that? The answer is yes. Do I think it's on a bigger government level, which is kind of what you're implying? That goes to the surveillance business, and I'm not so sure about that. I think the marginalized parts of society might be more affected by that. We're getting into little surveillance stuff here, the government surveillance. And marginalized, I'm not just talking about ethnic groups or anything like that. I mean, we saw what happened in China, right? I mean, there was a great Black Mirror episode, I don't know, a couple years ago, where the lady said something nasty to the travel agent, and she got demerits, so she couldn't go, she couldn't fly. And so she went to the next thing, which is a bus. And she was so annoyed that she couldn't get on those. So it got more demerits. And in China, that was happening. You can't get on a bus if your facial recognition says you can't. In that sense, I think, yes, government is infiltrating us. And it's through AI, not just the surveillance part of AI, but also the, call it a propaganda AI. They're slipping in messages.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things that we watch for movies, like you said. I haven't seen a single I haven't seen a real positive movie that depicts artificial intelligence in the way that we're talking about it. In the way of like an intelligent android. I mean, there was Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams that kind of showed a really good image of a positive artificial intelligence, a self-actualizing entity. But as you say, as we go on, these AIs that we're using today have nearly limitless availability to tap into the power grid, to tap into literally the World Wide Web. And we're not talking about some kind of Skynet possibility, are we?
I think we could be. I mean, there are all kinds of conspiracy theories now about, Soros. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And on the right, there's also those people, Illuminati, and things like that. So the question is, do I think that there's a worldwide conspiracy to control the world? I really don't think so. I think we're all involved in our own problems. We, governments, in our own problems. And I think we're also being diverted. We're just too dispersed. And we're too disconnected from each other. I'm talking nations and, undeveloped nations, developed nations, third world nations, and so forth, that I don't think anybody wants to control the whole world right now because it's too confusing. But let me digress a little bit, but only slightly, because I know the topic is AI. But I think the bigger topic should, in the future, maybe another podcast with some of your other guests, is climate change. And you made me think of that because I think climate change, more than AI, is what's going to change the geopolitics of the whole world. I think the developed world, here's an extreme case. The Gulf Stream stops. What does that mean? That means ice age comes down from the north. But before the ice age stops, this is kind of ironic. The ice age, which is the pre-ice age, is the Gulf Stream right now, which is slowing down. But before it slows down, the ice caps are melting. That means sea rise is happening on all coasts. And I looked this up the other day, as a matter of fact. 40% of the world population lives within 100 kilometers of some body of water, mostly oceans. They go under, so that's a problem. But then when the Gulf Stream stops, ice age comes down, and who benefits? The North African people will become lush again like they were prior to the pyramids being built. And if you really want to get carried away, they want slaves. We reverse this. This is really a crazy thought. We reverse it, and they need to power a very unpopulated area with people, and so they import people down there. That is a more universal cause of getting a worldwide, I don't want to call it a government, more, I think, than AI. So I've answered your question with a whole nother scenario.
No, that's okay. Because looking at that same idea, though, I mean, it's okay to diverge a little bit here. We live around the 45th parallel. We're halfway between the equator and the North Pole. And anybody who's been around here should have learned a long time ago that if the Gulf Stream stops, it's down here where we're going to get all that ice. The Willamette Valley was formed by the breaking of the ice wall at Missoula, Montana. So we know quite well environmental shifts happen. And that is a quite interesting thing to look at, because when mankind gets to the point where they're a little bit self-satisfied and running out of things like hope, and it's the hope that when we run out of hope, that's kind of the quote unquote we've killed God. We have no more meaning, and we end up having to try to find some other way to create meaning, and that's usually when we have agents of chaos, enter the criminal mind and Blade Runner. So when we're looking at all of these ideas and everything else, you write about this stuff, and you write about it in such a way that's designed to capture an audience. Can you tell me about more in your stories and in your writing, how it is that you explore these ideas?
Yeah, actually, I just kind of touched on one of the stories I wrote. It's called Revenge of a Duster, in which the North African countries became lush, and the northern countries became cold. And before that happened, people had two choices. You could either follow Elon Musk to Mars, you could escape that way, or you could escape south, or you were stuck in the middle and you had to live underground in the subway system of New York City or Boston or Philadelphia, because that's where you could live. And the perfect place to put a fab, chip map fabrication company, fabrication facility, is in a cold climate with a lot of water. So you put it on the Hudson River, which is now frozen over, and the people from Mars fight the people from the South for the control of that, because the Mars people need it for their robots, which they need because they can't live on the surface of Mars. But the people in the South need it because they still have the mines that require that, and they don't want to automate because they have people, and they can exploit the people. And so there's that tension between the slaves that they have and the slaves wanting to overthrow the new overlords in the middle. By the way, the slaves win.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of places like that in the United States. Speaking of living underground, Mesa Verde, I think, has an area that some of that stuff is either... There's a lot that's on the cliff dwellings. I know that. But they also have stuff that goes in, and I think some of those areas are called kivas. I'm not sure on that. But there is actually quite a bit of a history. That's Chaco Canyon. History of indigenous peoples in America talking about living underground. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing, that if they have oral stories about once upon a time living underground because of the Ice Age, because that, I honestly believe I think the Ice Age ended 11,200 to right around, what was it, 9,500 BC or something?
9,600, yeah.
Yeah, right in there.
Dry age.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so that's really in the aspect of history that isn't that long ago, right? If we've been around as humans, been around a couple 100,000 years, that's not that long ago. And so the idea that that is something available to humans again is kind of nice. But like you said, a mass, pretty much right around the equators, where all of civilization will end up being able to survive in a good way. It's kind of scary.
Well, speaking of living underground, you've probably what's been in the news a lot from an archaeological point of view are all the underground places in the southeastern Turkey. And I'm not talking about Göbekli Tepe, which is a temple. I'm talking about underground cities that are 20 stories below ground that have everything, including barns for animals. And there are two of them that are about 5 miles apart, and there's even a tunnel between the two of them. And so you wonder, did they go through what we just discussed? Is that what they were running from, or were they running from some? I mean, if you're a believer in Atlantis, you're running from a thermonuclear war, and that's what the thing was. Now, I don't know if you believe in Atlantis, but that's one theory. And the Atlantis built the pyramids, and I can talk about pyramids all day.
Yeah, I think what's it called? Darren Kayu. I think that's the place in Turkey you're talking about, the underground city.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, it's like 250 feet or something like that below ground, and it's massive. Yeah, you're right. Barns and all sorts of things, dwelling places,
Right.
and it was rediscovered just in the 60s. I mean, that's not that long ago either.
Right.
It's and you're right. Did they go there to escape a minor ice age?
Right. Or nuclear war? If you believe in Atlantis, how did Atlantis get wiped out, and are they the ones that built the pyramids and all that?
Right. Yeah, and then the AI thing could very well be a circular, a cyclical thing as well.
That's a good point. I mean, history does go in cycles, and are we at the peak of a cycle, or are we towards the end of a cycle? And there could be different reasons why we might be at the end, because the machines are going to take over. It could be because our resources are running out. It could be because of climate change, because climate, you mentioned Kivas and you mentioned the Younger Dryas. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of Randall Carlson, but he has he's got very good charts of the ups and downs of climate, and when floods happened and when Atlantis disappeared. He even pinpoints exactly where it is. He's one of 3 or 4 places that are very logical.
Yeah, I had a really good teacher learning. It was Greek archaeology. I was taking that course, and the teacher for that explored quite a bit of the area in Greece, as far as Santorini, obviously Crete, things like that. And he has a pretty interesting idea of where Atlantis was as well, and he's probably spot on with it. Yeah.
Oh, does he believe it's there at Santorini? And
not at Santorini specifically, but there seems to be an island location just outside of, what is that, the Iberian Peninsula, right there right after the Pillars
of Hercules.
Yeah. Not too far out. There's an uplift of land that's not as deep, and so very well could have been there. There's somebody else who says Northern Africa's got this really interesting place that's been found. It's got the circles, the circles and the circles, which is
that's 1,400 feet above sea level. I mean,
correct. How would that have flooded out?
Yeah.
Unless it was destroyed. Unless it was destroyed by a nuclear weapon, of course.
Randall Carlson is big on the Canary Islands, and there are people who believe that it's Antarctica, which also makes sense because that is the sea of the world. Sea of the world, because the Indian Ocean comes down there, the Atlantic Ocean comes down there, the Pacific Ocean comes down there. And are you familiar with Charles Hapgood? He believes there was Earth crust displacement. So the Earth mantle just shifted. And so where Brazil is now is where Antarctica used to be. It slipped down there. And that's why maps like the Piri-Reis map still shows the actual coastline of that. And on the other side of the world, so that slipped down, what slipped up would be where all those mastodons were found in Siberia that still had fresh food in their mouths. And you question how quickly that had to be, because you can't flash freeze a whole something the size of an elephant with fresh food in its mouth, because like when you put something in your freezer today, even water for your ice cube, it doesn't flash freeze. So the idea was some meteor came in and sucked in with it the negative 1500 degrees temperature. And that was the younger, it goes back to what you were talking about, the younger, driest days. That's what finished the younger, driest days, caused the floods. And now we have Noah talking about how he escaped.
Yeah, no, there was somebody I was talking to about Noah specifically, and because that's there in the Ararat Mountains and all of these places being found, Gobekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, like you said, and then not only that, but the Daring Kehu place is all there in the Turkey area, and it's all like right there, Lake Van, stuff like that. So it's like these areas are, they're probably likely areas that, historical is probably where Noah's come out, which is fine. I don't have any issues with that. It's probably true. And it's simply an interesting thing because it's a cycle. The Earth does go in these cycles. It's historical. The shifting of the magnetic poles. I was looking at a map of when I was a kid where the magnetic North Pole was, and it's hundreds of miles different than when it was when I was a kid. And so that's kind of strange to me how quickly even that magnetic pole has moved.
Yeah, are you a proponent of the pole about to shift now?
I'm okay theorizing some of the interesting global effects, but I'm also more of a I need to live today kind of thing. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I'm the guy out there on the clapboard saying the end is near, ringing my bell. I mean, but otherwise, a complete polar shift, either a 100 degrees flip where north is south and south is north, is interesting to me. I'm more of a believer that it would be a 90-degree shift, and that just seems to make a little bit more sense. Like you said, where Brazil was, it was probably where Antarctica is now, and so there was a big shift, and that's only like a 45-degree shift if you look at it. So that's kind of 45, 90 degrees. So I mean, a magnetic pole shift that's a 90-degree shift seems more logical to me, not a complete flip around, because how magnets work, it wouldn't make any sense to me.
Well, getting back to living for today, we kind of digressed there a lot, But going back to the effects of AI on society and our future, another thing I really worry about is that as the machines get smarter, we get dumber, and I look at the generations to come, and I see them. They don't need to learn to write because you can have voice to text. They don't need to learn to read because they have text to voice. And as we all become more dependent on stuff like that, we are in big trouble because let's circle back to what we just finished talking about. Something happens, the grid goes down. We're going to end up being no better than the Neanderthals, because none of us, you or I, or I'm sure, unless you have any high-tech listeners, really high-tech, we can't build a phone. We can't build an engine. We have the concept of wheels. We can do that, but we'd be lost in the future, and it's not going to take much for that to happen. Whether it's an Earth shift, an Earth crust shift, whether it's an ice age, whatever it is, we haven't built any pyramids that incorporate any future knowledge for the people. And I guess that's why Musk is all into leaving the planet and taking with us all the blueprints for cell phones and cars and skyscrapers and PCs.
Yeah, something I was actually trying to think about was that idea, right? The idea that the pyramids, they are what they are, and there's a lot of really cool information in them that can kind of be paralleled with things that we have today. But looking forward at the idea of our mankind making a lasting artifact like that is the program that is being thought up, and I'm not sure how far along they are, but it's done with scientists, and they're trying to figure out a way to tell generations, hundreds of generations in the future, that an area is radioactive, where we're kind of like burying all of our radioactive waste, and they want to tell these future generations not to be here, and so they're trying to come up with ways that would be a universal do not cross, because it's like you look at all these signs around the world that are for yield. They're different in different cultures or countries, excuse me, for driving. Stop signs are different in different countries around the world, and so we're trying to figure out a way to tell future generations, because as you were saying, with generate like they're swapping out analog clocks to put in digital clocks because children today can't read them. They're also back in 2019 in Oregon, where I am, you no longer have to demonstrate a proficiency in reading, writing, or the arithmetic to graduate from high school. That bothered me at such a high level because I was a huge proponent of going through high school, getting your diploma, getting some college, even if it was just a 2-year degree, which is what I've done. Do something to bring yourself up and put yourself somewhere above where you could be. And you look at that and you go, oh my goodness, where I am with my couple of years of, an associate's degree is nowhere near where my great uncle was. My great uncle could build things out of scratch. He knew how to do it. He's the kind of guy that could build an engine, if he could, put pieces together kind of, or make them himself. That's what we're talking about with those kind of people. And today, in the younger generation, you're 100% right. They wouldn't be able to honestly use a welder today.
Yeah, yeah. On the other hand, I 100% agree with that. If somebody asked you, a kid that's high school, and where should I go to college? I struggle with how to answer that question if it was ever asked of me. On the one hand, I want to say, well, you got to make a living, so become a tradesman, a craftsman of some sort. But on the other hand, I worry that with the homogenization of our culture, because of the internet and because of being siloed, I worry. I would suggest go get a liberal arts degree. Read Keats. Read H.G. Wells. Read Jules Verne, and also Jane Eyre and things like that. But they would say, well, what am I going to do with that? We're starting to live in a world that has no imagination. And the reason we don't have an imagination is because we don't have to think of it. We have our brains in our pocket, which is a cell phone. We've outsourced so much of our stuff. We've outsourced our memories. We've outsourced our sense of direction. You want to go to the grocery store that's only 5 miles away. You still put it in Waze, not because you don't know how to get there, but because, well, maybe the traffic was something, different like that. And I think for the younger generation, you and I might remember how to get there because we've been there 100 times. They might not know how without that. I mean, they'd get there, but it wouldn't be a straight path. And imagine trying to get somewhere 200 miles away.
And being able to read a paper map.
Reading a paper map, yeah.
My goodness. I do. I know how to read a paper map. But, I watch maybe some younger people, hey, help me get here. And you're right. The first thing they do is they go on to the iMaps. They go, here you go. I'll print it out for you. It's like, oh, why don't you show me on a paper map?
But it's not just them. It's my generation and your generation too. And that's what's getting a little scary. that I've said this before, I'm repeating myself. We've outsourced all our stuff, but most of all, we've outsourced our imagination because we don't have to think about anything anymore. And we don't have to remember anything anymore. My favorite scene in the Harry Potter show movie was when Harry had his wand and he put it towards the mem sieve, I think it was called, a memory sieve. And he could, and by the way, Ray Kurzweil, getting back to him, he believes that, once the nanobots get into our heads, replaces our synapses, they can download our brain, and you can go to the market and you can get my brain if you want to, or I can go get Obama's brain, or I can go get Trump's brain, and you get yours, I'll get mine, and we'll fight it out. And there'll be a market for brains. That's one of the things I want to explore. You can go to the market and get a brain.
You have to have one to buy one, right? I don't know. God. But anyways, as we wind down in this, was a good conversation. I appreciate going all over the place. It's great. I like doing that because it feels a little bit more natural. We're able to talk about a lot of different things. There's a lot of stuff that we're both interested in, Robert, and I appreciate that. And as we continue this last couple of minutes here, I would like you to just go ahead and talk about this newest book that you've got. It's going to be in the show notes, highlighted specifically because I know you have several others, but you've got a new one that's out, and that's kind of what we're really wanting to focus on. So if you'll take a few minutes to talk about that, where people can find it and where people can find you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really like my short stories, and I think maybe your listeners would like those too, because they talk exactly about the things we've talked about. Some of the short stories are about future society.
Okay.
I'm really interested in what we talked about, how the Earth is going to change due to climate change and so forth. Some of it is about technology and the future of mass murder. I mean, that's an interesting one because, and the future of censorship. We don't need censorship anymore. And the reason we don't need censorship anymore is, this is not one of my books. I'm diverting into a conversation again. The reason we don't need censorship anymore is because we don't believe anything we hear anymore. Everything is fake news, even if it's true. And so there's so much discord in the news. There are so many silo versions of the news that you don't know what to believe. So you don't need censorship anymore because you won't even believe the censors.
Right.
Anyhow, I also like some of the things that Kurzweil was saying about, what is the future of dating when you have all these things the nanobots in your mind.
Right.
So those are the things I talk about in a lot of my short stories. The longer book is, I already discussed that a little bit about climate change and how the world will look again in the future and how tables will be turned. The people getting slaves will be the people from whom slaves were brought in the past. Kind of an interesting perspective.
It is. And then where can people find you?
Just go to Amazon books and punch in Robert Howell, and all 6 of my books are there. 3 of them are teen books, but the other 3 are 2 short stories and 1 novel.
Are these independently published then? Is that through KDP? Or?
Yes, exactly.
That's great. Cool. And then do you have like a contact me form on your website?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. And I can tell you what it is. It's Among Us Books, AMONGUS Books, BOOKS, at yahoo.com.
Fantastic. Yeah, because that's a really good way for listeners who read your stories to reach out and say, I like this. This was really nice. Could you write more on this one? And I think as independent authors,
I'd be happy to do
needed.
it. Yeah, I hope your listeners are as enthusiastic about this as you and I are. I can get carried away.
That's good. I enjoy exploring some of these futuristic opportunities, as we can call them. Well, Robert, I really do appreciate your time, and thank you very much for coming on my show and talking to me about these things.
Well, thank you and your listeners for having me in their house.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome back, sir. You wanted to review the new model, sir, before shipment?
Thank you for listening. This is a free podcast based upon the value for value model. If you find value in this, or any episode, you can return that value by liking the show, subscribing to this channel, leaving a review, or sharing with a friend on your social media accounts. You can also donate on my website. Thank you again. This is BT for Truth and Shadow Podcast. You are the light in the darkness.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
It's a very strange, funny time where everybody would love to be able to be themselves, but they can't because they must fall in line with the person in front of them.
The terrible thing about searching for the truth is that sometimes you find it.
You take the red pill. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. You stay in Wonderland. Believe whatever you want to believe.
See, the more at peace you become, the less you tolerate chaos. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you.
You want to live that kind of life? I wish you the best. I'll be on the other side somewhere, you know?
Protecting your peace isn't about shutting the world out. It's about keeping your inner world clear enough to hear your own soul.
The terrible thing about searching for the truth is that sometimes you find it.
After all you've seen, after all the evidence, why can't you believe it?
The truth, nothing more.